I was hanging out with my friend DeMarcus, and we were watching a documentary about the Harry Potter books. About 36 minutes into the documentary, they started to discuss the book sales. And apparently, she had sold over 600 million copies. God damn, I said amazed. She must be loaded. You're right, DeMarcus said. If she sold each book for $10, she'd have like $89,000 in revenue. Although his math was terrible, I understood the sentiment that she was making some serious money. We should totally write a book, DeMarcus cried out with excitement. Well, I did get a B- in English class, but I have no idea what we'd write about. Me either, DeMarcus said, less enthused. But how about we go down to the library and try and get some ideas? Me and DeMarcus then ordered an Uber to the nearest library, and after we arrived, we immediately started looking around for some inspiration. We tore through every book we could, but nothing stood out to us. Damn it, DeMarcus, I said. None of these books are badass like Harry Potter. Yeah, definitely not, DeMarcus replied. Maybe we should ask the librarian what's the most famous book in the world, and then just go with that. Sounds good to me, I responded. We then made our way over to a lady sitting behind a desk. Excuse me, miss. Do you have a moment to answer a question? DeMarcus asked the librarian. Why, of course I do, she said in a sweet, welcoming voice. How can I help you? Well, me and my friend were just curious. What's the most popular book in the world? She said, perplexed. Have you read The Hobbit? Personally, I fuck with that heavy. Shit be wild. But if I had to say the most popular based strictly on distribution, it would probably have to be the Bible. The Bible? I said, confused. I never would have guessed. Yeah, that shit's pretty fire, the librarian responded. Would you like me to fetch you a copy? Yes, please, DeMarcus answered. The librarian then left to grab us a copy, and after a brief moment she returned and said it must be our lucky day because we got the last one. Must be fate, I said to DeMarcus. We then checked out the book and got an Uber back to my mom's house. We spent the next few hours reading the Bible trying to find some inspiration, but sadly, nothing was coming to us. Damn it, DeMarcus, I can't think of anything. What do we do now? DeMarcus sat for a moment and started to stroke his chin. He then began to speak. What if we just write a sequel, and we could call it the Bible 2, Electric Boogaloo? What the hell is an electric boogaloo? I asked, confused. I'm not really sure, DeMarcus said. I think it's just some sort of dance. Oh hella, I responded. We then spent the next 3 weeks writing the Bible 2, Electric Boogaloo, and after 3 or 4 rough drafts, we finally finished our book. I'm not gonna lie, DeMarcus, but this shit is pretty fucking sweet. Especially the part where Jesus fights the silverback gorilla. That was awesome. And when he won that dance battle to end terrorism, brilliant. Right, bro? DeMarcus said with excitement. Now all we gotta do is find a publisher. Let's get on Google and see what we can find. After about 15 minutes, we found that the best way to get a publisher was by first getting a literary agent. We looked up a few agencies and actually found one about 30 minutes from my house. We then printed off a copy of our book and ordered an Uber. On the way over, me and DeMarcus discussed what it would be like when we became rich, and then we made a promise to never let the money change us. After what felt like forever, we finally arrived at the talent agency. We thanked our Uber driver and made our way into the building to find an elderly Asian woman working as a receptionist. Welcome. How can I help you two? Well, we just wrote a book, and we're looking for a literary agent to help us get it published, DeMarcus said to the elderly Asian woman. I'm sorry, but all of our agents are meeting with other clients right now. But if you have a copy of your book, I'll be happy to pass it on to one of our agents, and they can call you back later. I then pulled out the copy we had printed off, and then I handed it to the receptionist. The Bible 2 Electric Boogaloo, she read aloud. That sounds pretty fucking sweet. She then asked for our names and phone number. DeMarcus wrote down the information and handed it to the woman. We thanked her for her time, and then we went back to my house. The next few days, me and DeMarcus sat by the phone awaiting a call. What if they didn't like our book? I knew we should have added a second lightsaber battle, DeMarcus said distraught. No, I replied. A second lightsaber battle would have diminished the integrity and impact of the first one. You're right, DeMarcus sadly replied. But why hasn't anyone called? Well, it's only been 3 days, and the book is 1,200 pages. They probably just haven't finished it yet. Before DeMarcus could respond, my phone started to ring. Ah, shit, I said. I think it's them. Well, don't just stand there. Pick up the phone, DeMarcus said, exhilarated. I then answered the call and put it on speaker. Hello? I nervously said. Yes, hello. This is young Steve. I'm a literary agent, and I'm looking for Brian and DeMarcus. This is Brian. Thanks for reaching out. Ah, yes, Brian. I just wanted to reach out and tell you, that book you left us was pretty fucking cool. That part where Jesus decided to give up gangbanging and start a youth center for underprivileged children in the inner city, that really spoke to me. I've read that shit like 3 times already, and I've reached out to a few publishers that are all anxious to publish your book. Fuck yeah, DeMarcus cried out. Fuck yeah's right, young Steve said. It's not often that someone's first attempt at getting published is successful. But the Bible 2 Electric Boogaloo is special. Thank you, sir, I said graciously. So what's next then? Well, with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and get your book to Lock and Save Publishing. And they'll pretty much do everything to get your book in stores worldwide. No way, I said in disbelief. And what will we have to do? I then asked young Steve. All you'll need to do is get a bathing suit, 'cause you and your friend DeMarcus are about to be swimming in not only money, but fine-ass bitches too. Now I'm going to give Lock and Save Publishing a call, and I'll talk to you two later. I thanked young Steve numerous times, and then I ended the phone call. Within a few weeks, our book went #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list. Me and DeMarcus became overnight celebrities, and as of last Tuesday, we have sold 248 million copies and projected to hit 500 or 600 million by the end of the year. Everything was going great, till one day we got a call from our literary agent. Hello, I said. Brian, this is young Steve. I need you and DeMarcus to get down to my office ASAP. Sure thing, young Steve. Is something wrong? No, nothing's wrong. I just really need to see you two as soon as possible. Young Steve then hung up the phone, and DeMarcus asked me what's going on. I'm not sure, but young Steve needs us to come by his office ASAP. I then grabbed the keys to my brand new Tesla, and me and DeMarcus headed over to Steve's office. We arrived about 30 minutes later, and I immediately noticed that something wasn't right. The parking lot was deserted, and at the time it was midday, which was normally busy as hell. DeMarcus and I entered the building, and to our surprise, the receptionist wasn't working. "Are you sure young Steve said to meet us here?" DeMarcus asked, confused. "I'm positive. Maybe it's a holiday or something." We then made our way to young Steve's office and heard what sounded like young Steve being attacked. We pushed open Steve's office door to find a nun beating the holy hell out of him with a 12-inch ruler. "Oh, thank God you're here. This bitch is crazy." The nun stopped beating young Steve and looked back at me and DeMarcus. "So you're the two assholes who decide to besmirch the greatest book ever made?" "No. We're the two badass visionary geniuses who wrote the greatest book of all time," DeMarcus shot back. He then, without looking, raised his hand for a high five, which I perfectly connected. "And what exactly is badass about writing the most blasphemous book I've ever read?" "Let's see. The money, the bitches, and admiration of millions of fans," young Steve said from behind the nun. Without warning, she hit Steve with a roundhouse kick, knocking him out cold. "Now look, boys, I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to make this simple. You will pull every book from the shelves, apologize to the Catholic Church, and donate all the money you've made to charity. And if we don't," I without fear asked the nun, "then you'll be making me angry, and you wouldn't like me when I'm angry." "Well, I don't like you much now. Couldn't be any worse," I said defiantly. "Look, I'm sorry, but me and my constituents are making far too much money. The book stays." "You're goddamn right it does," young Steve said while regaining consciousness. The nun then smirked. "You know, refusing a completely justified request makes me angry, but using the Lord's name in vain makes me really angry." Her eyes then turned bright green, and she transformed into a 7-foot-tall humanoid fire-breathing dragon. "God damn," DeMarcus cried out in terror. She then picked up young Steve by the collar of his shirt, and in a scary demonic-like voice said, "The power of Christ compels you." She then began spraying fire from her mouth directly into young Steve's face, burning every bit of flesh till nothing remained but a charred skull. She then let go of young Steve, as me and DeMarcus watched his lifeless body hit the floor. "Look, boys, I was sent here on direct orders from God himself. Either you take down the book, or I will take you from this earth, and you will burn for eternity with that piece of shit young Steve." "But I don't understand. Why would God be upset with our book?" "Why would he be upset?" the fire-breathing dragon nun said in disbelief. "Let's see." She then grabbed a copy of the Bible off young Steve's desk, perused through it, and then began to read a passage. After hitting rock bottom, Jesus vowed to change, and through the power of God completed rehab for a 5th time. He then set his sight on becoming the UFC featherweight champion and getting on the Joe Rogan podcast. That's not even blasphemous. That's fucking inspirational, DeMarcus said proudly. The fire-breathing dragon nun backhanded DeMarcus, sending him flying into a framed picture of young Steve and the 24-inch rainbow trout he caught on his last vacation. The fire-breathing dragon nun then grabbed me by my shirt and lifted me into the air. This is your last chance, Brian. Agree to my demands, or you will suffer a fate worse than young Steve, the fire-breathing dragon nun screamed in anger. From over the nun's shoulder, I noticed DeMarcus slowly approaching with a shank-like piece of broken glass in his hand. And knowing she was moments away from her death, I said something to buy some time. Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you over the sound of you dying. The fire-breathing dragon nun's eyebrow raised in confusion, and then DeMarcus stabbed her in the neck with the broken piece of glass. She then let go of me as she grabbed her neck in pain. Fire and blood sprayed from between her fingers as she stumbled around the office in agony. And then out of nowhere her head burst into a ball of flames and blew up. She died almost instantly. The office and everything in it soon caught fire. We gotta get out of here, I yelled at DeMarcus. Smoke and fire began spreading through the building as me and DeMarcus ran for our lives. And just as we got outside safely, the entire building exploded, setting off every car alarm in a 2-mile radius. Not wanting to get blamed for the fire, or the 2 bodies they were sure to find, me and DeMarcus got in my Tesla, and we hit the road. The next day, what happened was all over the news, and me and DeMarcus were brought in for questioning by the police, mainly because of our close association with young Steve. But we were eventually let go due to lack of evidence. Our book sales nearly tripled after all the publicity, and there was a huge demand for us to write another sequel. But after everything that happened, me and DeMarcus agreed it wasn't worth the risk. So, scary fire-breathing dragon nun, let's not meet again. But if we do, I hope we can get past the Bible 2 electric boogaloo. Anyways, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you don't mind, hit that notification bell. Also, my funny, scary stories are now available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and a ton of other services. Just search C. Mustard's Funny Scary Story Podcast.